when I jump into some of these calls, I don't know all the answers. I don't know, but that's not what people are looking for from me. What they're looking for from me is, am I confident that I'm going to be able to lead us through this
Right.
crisis? That's what they're looking
Yeah.
for.
Hey, what's up, folks? This is Granison Shines with Siduri International, and welcome to our leadership interview series. Today, I have the distinct pleasure of interviewing a gentleman who has made a staple in the industry for which he's in. I'll let him talk more about that, but let me read a little bit about Mr. Auston Davis. Auston has built a distinguished career and reputation as a recognized cybersecurity expert. He is a highly sought after industry speaker and was recently named to the prestigious Becker's Review as of one of the 32 CISOs you must know in the healthcare industry. In addition to his role as CISO at HeartFlow, Auston serves as part-time as an adjunct professor of computer science at San Jose State University, and he also leads a class in cryptology and computer science. Please help me welcome Mr. Auston Davis. How's it going, sir?
All right, great, Granison. How you doing?
Very well, thank you. Thank you very much for your time also in this interview series. It's very much so a pleasure to talk with you about what we're going to discuss today in terms of leadership.
All right, I'm looking forward to it, and I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. So where are you based out of for our audience?
So our headquarters is based out of Redwood City, and then with COVID, just like everybody else, I'm working remote from San Jose right now.
Okay, all right. And you are in the leadership position. Before we get all into that, we're going to talk about a little bit of fun stuff. So I understand that you are a family man and you like having fun with little cigars and whiskeys. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, the hard part is, being a father and being a husband doesn't always necessarily line up well. Sure. With my love of cigars, but a good cigar is a great way to wind down some of those tougher weeks.
Sure.
And I absolutely love sneaking away and getting a good cigar. And I continue to learn about cigars from people like yourself and others that it's not just a wrapper and some tobacco. There's actually a lot more to it. So
there's a lot that goes into it. Absolutely. Yeah. You are a graduate of San Jose State University. Give us a little bit of background about your education.
Sure. So I went to San Jose State several years ago, graduating in 1997, and then was in the Air Force, and after a few years realized in order to promote past a certain rank in the Air Force, I would need a master's degree, and so I went back to Boston University at that point and got my master's degree in computing information systems with a concentration in cybersecurity. And at this point, really my continuing education is keeping up with just trying to keep up with all the constant changes going on in the cybersecurity field.
Sure. Yeah, we're going to dive into that. And you're also a risk taker, as I understand, with the two-wheeled fast street bike. Tell us a little bit about your racing opportunities there.
A friend of mine, Chris Lee, actually was an instructor, and he takes people to what's called track days. And on track days, they rent out these major tracks like Buttonwillow and Laguna Seca. No cars, no police. They have people that drive around the track to make sure it's safe. and you basically race around the track all day. It's, for those people that love riding motorcycles, but like where I live, it's getting to be too dangerous to do it on the street.
Sure. Yeah.
Track days is the answer. You become such a better rider. Um, I've been riding 20 years, and
20 years.
oh yeah, but when I first started going to the track, I would learn more in one day riding on the track than I would in 10 years
Really?
of riding on the street. Yeah, it's it's a great community of riders. It's people people from all different lifestyles, backgrounds, but everybody comes together on the track because they don't want to see anybody get hurt. Everybody's out there to have fun and become better riders, and so it's a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Awesome, awesome. Well, that is something that I wanted to get into, never got into it. I went the other route and went to wave runners and jet skis on the water. So
There you go.
for that reason, like you're saying, it's pretty dangerous on the highway. However, risk taking is part of our being a leader, right?
Mhm.
And let me segue into that. Obviously, you're a prominent leader, C-suite leader there at HeartFlow. Risk taking. Talk to me about risk taking. How does that play a role in your leadership opportunities on a daily basis?
Well, I mean, it's kind of twofold. I mean, especially within the cybersecurity career field, you're really doing risk management. You're identifying risk on a constant basis and determining um, either one, how can I mitigate this risk, or two, how can I actually achieve full remediation of a risk.
Right.
Um, as a C-suite leader, it's a little bit different. And the reason why I say that is you're taking, what you come to realize very quickly is you're making decisions that affect other people's livelihoods. You're making decisions that, um, for that parent that's trying to put their kid through college, or for that parent that just learned that, or that individual that just learned that a family member's sick, and your decision could potentially affect whether or not this person can pay for all the things that they need to pay for, or a bad decision can not just affect yourself but end up affecting the entire company.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. How important is that when we are talking about leading others, taking risks? There are times when we don't know if things are going to turn out the way we want to, right? We can speculate, we can assume and presume based on calculated information. So how important and how do you utilize that within the leading people and managing people?
Yeah, well, um, in some circles, risk is viewed as a bad thing. In other circles, the circles that I follow, I'll say, um, risk is a great thing. It just depends on, are you somebody that kind of flies by the seat of your pants and goes off feeling, or are you person that takes in data points, um, and then goes with your gut and the data points to make a decision.
Right.
And I think I'm more in that latter category, to where I'm actually encouraging my team members on a daily basis to take a risk. And in this particular case, it's, what the answer is to this problem.
Sure.
You know how to solve that problem. Now, I try to create an environment where if you fail, or because I don't even believe in failure, if it doesn't go the way you want it to go, try to make the environment safe enough to where, hey, that's okay. The company hasn't shut down. The sun is still out.
Right.
We can recover from it. The only thing that I ask my team to do is, one, know why you're doing everything that you're doing.
Very
Don't just do, right?
word. Yes. Why? Yes.
The second thing is, to trust themselves. If I'm trusting you, then why don't you trust yourself? Right.
Good. Right.
And then the third thing, don't dwell, if it doesn't go the way you want it to, don't dwell on, well, it didn't go the way I wanted it to. Figure out what you learned. There's this one quote that I have 4 t-shirts with the same quote on it. And it says, I never lose. It's a quote by Mandela. I never lose. I either win or I learn, right? And that's the mantra that I have when it comes to risk management. And I might have misquoted that, but that's the mantra.
Sure.
Now, with me in my particular position, I know that I have to, sometimes I have to be a little bit more conservative than maybe I like to, but I have to be a little bit more conservative with the risk taking that I'm making, again, because of the number of people it potentially affects.
Right.
But, in my personal life, when it comes to risk taking and those sorts of things, I do my homework, and then at the end of the day, I do what feels right.
Right.
And the biggest part with the biggest difference there is I'm okay with the outcome, no matter what the outcome is. Case in point, hey, I want to invest in this stock. Well, everybody's saying is I don't care about what everybody's saying. I do my analysis.
Yep.
If I end up losing money, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna run out in the middle of the street crying. Hey, you know what? That was a decision I made. It didn't pan out the way I wanted it to, and I'm all right with that.
Absolutely.
My whole focus at that point becomes, what would I do different? And sometimes, Granison, I actually come to that point to where I say nothing.
Yeah.
There's not a thing I would do different.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and that's good. You said that. You also mentioned earlier on in your conversation when you're giving solutions with your team members, you mentioned trusts. They trust in their qualities, their abilities, and their judgments, which is the definition of confidence. We teach that in our program. We say confidence is the trust you have in your abilities, qualities, and judgments. Speaking of confidence, how important is that in your line of work as a leader, and how do you filter that down throughout your team?
I will say confidence is everything. Just to kind of, go down a slightly different path here.
Mm-hmm.
I remember earlier in my career, the job that I did, my main focus of what was called threat response and investigations. And in threat response, Granison, oftentimes you're going into a situation where something really bad has happened within the company, and everybody's looking to you. They're not looking for, somebody else to provide the answers. They're looking to you to say, we're in the middle of a crisis. How are you going to bring us out? And I remember this, we had this one particularly bad incident. This wasn't at HeartFlow. This was earlier in my career. But we had this one particular, really bad incident that we were in. And I remember when I got on the phone, this one person said, man, I always felt better once you're on the call, right? And that compliment meant everything to me. And it meant everything to me for this one reason. When I jump into some of these calls, I don't know all the answers. I don't know, but that's not what people are looking for from me. What they're looking for from me is, am I confident that I'm going to be able to lead us through this crisis? That's what they're looking for. That person when I was getting ready to leave that company, asked, how are you always so confident when we're in the middle of these situations and you got people who are, some are panicking and some are, uh, how do you always stay calm? And I always say, I show you confidence because that's my job.
Yeah.
But I said, I'm no different than a duck. If you look at a duck, it looks like it's just gliding across the water.
Sure.
But if you look underneath that water,
Like,
those feet are, going 100 miles an hour. and that's how I am. That you talk about confidence, Granison, and as a leader, both on the military side, and being in the Air Force for 23 years, you learn very quickly. As the leader, you always have to be the confident one. And confident doesn't mean, some people equivocate confidence with arrogance or, other kind of negative connotations.
sure.
To me, confidence is you're the one person that already trusts and knows that everything is going to turn out all right. I can think of a couple of instances in the military when we were in really difficult situations. And my troops were looking at me to see if everything was okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I remember the first time that actually, I was actually became aware of that, right?
Mhm.
And it was when one of the older guys that had been in, a bit longer than me, pulled me to the side and said, "Hey, sir, just so you know, if you're sad, then everybody else is gonna start being sad about the
Yep.
situation."
Yep. The energy is infectious.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. And so, so probably not the best way to put it, but as a leader, some of the time you need to be the best actor in the room, right?
Yeah.
Even when you're going through your own
Well
doubts,
well
that's not the job. The job is to lead your people. And
right.
sometimes leading your people is your body language. Sometimes leading your people is in the words that you choose to use
Absolutely.
about a particular
Absolutely.
situation. So it's the same thing, in my current job now. A lot of times, if we're listening to like at an all hands or something, and they hear about how the company is performing, and maybe it's not something positive, or they hear about something that's coming, um, and they don't know all the details about it.
Right.
9 times out of 10, they're gonna look at how do I respond. If
Right.
I'm like, oh man, this is terrible, then they're gonna go,
Yep.
wow, this is terrible. I need to start
Follow
looking for
suit.
another place. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if I'm like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. This makes absolute sense for where we are. Then that transfers confidence,
Absolutely.
and that's my job.
Yes, that is your job. That's absolutely right. We have so many instances and concepts in the program. We talk about how that energy, where there's confidence or any emotion, whatever emotion is, there's energy, and confidence is you have some passion and emotion behind that. And like you said, that is transferable. It is infectious. If people see that you're confident, then they're going to be confident. People see that you're distraught and you're all over the place. Guess what? They're going to be distraught and all over the place. And that's where in confidence, and you mentioned one of the questions, we talk about the 6 most important questions. You mentioned why. And that's twofold. One is on a conversation technique called the complete communication technique. The other one is on self-awareness, what you also mentioned. Awareness, you said you had that awareness when you're in the military. How important is it for a leader to be self-aware and to introspect and to self-reflect? Talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, Granison, you bring up some great points, and the reason why I kind of laugh there is it's everything.
Everything.
Self-awareness is everything for a leader.
Yes.
And I'll give you case in point. one of the people that I enjoyed working with the most, um, there was this one lady that everybody always thought she was upset. And that was just her natural aura, you know. Now I had come to work with her during very difficult times and very very positive times.
Mhm.
And I realized that's just her personality. She's the same. She's a very consistent person.
Sure.
But she wasn't aware that, you know, when she's going into thinking mode, that she would kind of get this frown on her face.
Ah.
Like, stay away from me.
Right.
I don't want nothing to do with you. Stop bothering me right now. Which was the exact opposite. She's like, Austin, how come people don't approach me? And I'm like, well, you kind of look like you want to hurt somebody.
All
You
right.
know, when you're in when you're in because I can tell when you're in thinking mode, but you look like you want to hurt somebody. Um,
Wow.
so you know, she kind of picked up on that, and she said, well, should I smile more? And I said, no, because it's not going to come off genuine. Just, you know, maybe take a deep breath or something like that when you see somebody, because your body automatically relaxes, you know. um, I remember another guy, um, this particular person didn't really realize that, um, like when he got amped up, um, it would change his whole demeanor. It would, I'd actually see people run when this guy would show up when he was, you know, when he was amped up.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And I remember him asking me, you know, Austin, what if you know I'm going into a new role, what's one thing that you would ask me, you know, that you would recommend I do different? And you know, I tell him, man, just take a deep breath. You know, look, I know you're under a lot of pressure, but uh, you take all that pressure and then you transfer it, right? You transfer it to the people you work with. I
Right.
said, think about it. If you if you're looking to someone uh, to lead you through a situation, and that person is amped up and out of control, are you going to want to listen to that person, or are you going to want to go away from that person so that you can focus on, you
Sure.
know,
Yeah.
getting out of the situation? And
Yes.
you know, both of those cases, it wasn't that they were bad people. It was just, you know, they weren't aware how their environments affected them. They weren't aware of uh, the body language that they were giving off.
Sure.
It's the same for me, Granison. I mean, I you know, I had situations, um, you know, earlier in my career where when I need to think, I need to be alone.
Yes. Same here.
Now, before I became, you know, a little bit more self-aware about it, I would just go,
Yep.
right? Now, to me, that was fine, right? I'm doing what I need to do to take care of the company. What's wrong with that?
Right.
But what I wasn't aware of was some people thought he's
How they see
running.
people, right?
Some people thought he doesn't want to be around me. I must be part of the problem,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
Some people thought, well, he's troubleshooting this issue with some other people that maybe he thinks are smarter than me, because he's just going off. And I wasn't communicating. Number one, Granison, I had to become kind of aware of the impact of just walking out of a room was having on multiple other people. But then two, I realized, okay, when you walk out of a room, you got to stop thinking about it in terms of yourself as an individual. You're always the leader. You know, depending on what your role is, you're always the leader. And
Yes.
so you have to be thinking in terms of, um, again, how am I affecting other people? And then that's where communication comes
Absolutely.
paramount.
Absolutely.
So
That's imperative there, what you just said, and how that ties into how well, first of all, let me say this. You impress upon people. You got to make an impression upon people anytime you deal with people, correct? And then they're going to perceive some things about you. And by either default, by not being self-aware, or on purpose being deliberate, you're going to create a reputation. So you're going to create your reputation by default or by intention. Either way, we have to make sure that what we impress upon people and what they perceive about us matches up to what we want them to think. And like you said, that's where communication comes into play. So let's segue our conversation to communication.
okay.
As leaders, we're always communicating, right? We always have to either talk up to superiors, talk horizontally within other peers and colleagues. Then we also have to talk down to, let's say down the ladder to our subordinates. How important is communication? It's first of all, let me say this, folks. It's a 37 billion with the B billion-dollar issue globally. How important is that to you, communication?
Granison, just even beyond leadership, if you can't communicate,
Yes.
you cannot. I don't think there's a job in the world that you can actually do if you don't have effective communication.
Right.
Pretty much every job that we all do requires some sort of coordination and collaboration with somebody else in order to achieve the job.
Right.
So I would say communication is the baseline for everything, for absolutely everything. I remember kind of years ago, one of my mentors would always say, well, Auston, communication is two parts. It's the sender and the receiver. Now, you're not responsible for how the message is received. And as I got, a little bit older and a little bit more experienced, started to challenge that concept a little bit.
Sure. Okay.
I am the sender. I am responsible for sending the message, but I'm also responsible for knowing my audience. I'm responsible for knowing the receiver.
Agreed.
And so, it's just like with me. A lot of times when I walk into an organization and they know about my military service, they think, oh, he's a person that just likes direct. He likes yelling. He likes, all these things that are associated with military communication, which actually couldn't be farther from the truth. So they're kind of bracing themselves for that type of communicator, which I'm not. My style of communication is, for the most part, just focus on the problem and let's focus on how we're going to solve the problem. Let me figure out how what we're talking about affects you so that we make sure that we cover that piece. And let me make sure that I'm articulating what I need in the particular situation and make sure I communicate that piece as well. Now, how I do that depends on the person. A lot of people kind of wear this badge of honor. As, well, I'm a straight shooter. I just tell it how it is, right? That may work for some types of people,
yes,
but it doesn't work for all types of people.
No.
And my job as a leader is to figure out what types of communication motivate different types of people.
Absolutely. Yep.
And so, I part of these different groups, Bay Area CISOs, Council Association for Executives and Healthcare Information Security, and so on and so on and so on. And we get together and we talk about some of the common issues that we're all deal with as leaders. And I remember talking to some of the other CISOs, and they talk about, I wish I could just say what I want to say. And I remember having that mindset, like, and I should be able to say what I want to say, and people should just deal with it. But those guys were the ones that were wondering why can't I retain anybody?
Yes, there you go. Glad you put there. Yep.
Even more so, why can't I attract anybody?
Right.
Like, because you're saying what you want to say, but the problem is you can't have it both ways.
Nope.
Right. And communication as a tool of motivation is everything. I know this one person, they don't want all the flowers, they don't want all the fluff. Just tell me what you need to tell me, and let me run with it.
Sure. Yeah.
I know this other person, I need to start off with all the great things that you're doing.
Yes.
Right. I got to spend time making sure that you understand how appreciated you are before I deliver the news of where I need to see change.
Right.
Other people, it's the other way around. Don't beat around the bush up front. Let's make things, a little bit more positive on the back end. But, right from the beginning, tell me what's on your mind, because I'm going to get frustrated if I feel like you're just telling me, kind of fluff stuff. Tell me what the problem is, and then, ease my feelings on the back end, the conversation. But it's all different for different types.
Absolutely, yeah. And that what you're saying, that fluidity in the communication, who we're communicating to. Mae West, who was an actress, she said a while. She said her one of the quotes was, "It's not what you say, but how you say it."
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've learned in communication, it's not just about what you say, it is about how you say it, is where you say it, is who you say it to, it is what you say, and it is how you say. I mean, it's the who, what, why, where, when, how, when you say a thing. It's everything encompassed. And as you get more tenured in leadership, and I coach some of the people like you're talking about, they're like, well, why can't I just say what I want to say? And I say, well, again, like you said, you can't have it both ways. However, even though you want to say something that may even come across derogatory, if you utilize your communication in the right way, you can still tell them what you need to tell them, but you have to just structure and create your sentence and your words differently. Besides, because you may say something and it may come across condescending to me, but if you utilize certain techniques, certain words, be emotionally intelligent, how this person can perceive it and what emotions you may trigger in them, then you have an opportunity to piece together the right words at the right time and who you're saying it to be much more effective. And we're accountable for that, right, as leaders.
Absolutely. It's funny because it ties back to what you were talking about earlier. Even with self-awareness, how we communicate, for even for myself, Granison, to be an effective communicator with others, kind of went back to that whole self-awareness thing, because I had to ask myself,
True.
How do I like to receive information?
Me too. I'm raising my hand. Absolutely.
But what that allowed me to do was to tell other people, look, when you talk to me, here's how to make it the best conversation possible.
Oh,
right?
Yes. I love it. Dude, there was one part in our program where we have this one quote up, and at the top it says agree or disagree, and it says, we teach people how to communicate with us. You just said that. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I had to interject that.
Absolutely.
How important is that to teach people how to communicate with us?
Well, I mean, I think it's absolutely necessary to improve communication between two people and actually make that possible interaction the best possible outcomes possible. And I'll give you a quick couple of examples. Some CISOs, Granison, love data points, right? If I ask you something simple, then I want 20 data points on what you just told me.
All right.
Other CISOs don't want any data points. Just tell me what you want to tell me and move on. And so when people new people would come to the organization before they learn, what are the kind of the common questions that I ask in any given situation, they'll either do one or the other. Hey boss, we had an incident, and walk off like, and
Okay. That's it? More?
in other cases it was, well, we had this situation and my grandma was sick and then my puppy got its front teeth. Okay, what does this have to do with what the situation is?
Exactly.
And so what I learned is I have to be direct about, how I like to be communicated with. So if you're trying to convey something to me, here's what you need to focus on.
Right.
And once I started telling people, look, here's what here's the main things that I need to know when you and I are having a conversation. And then the other thing that I did was I started being very consistent with some of the questions that I would ask so that they could start being, they could start preparing. Like, oh, getting ready to talk to Austin. I know I'm going to need to know this, and this. Yeah. And if I know those three things, then I know the conversation is going to go really well. If I don't know those three things, then he's going to ask more questions about this, or he's going to ask more questions about that, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's going to make the conversation a lot longer than it needs to be. And I know, I know with Austin that, for myself, Granison, I don't have a lot of time in a day.
Yeah.
And one of the things, again, it kind of goes back to that whole self-awareness thing, is I try not to let my teams feel like I don't have a lot of time in the day.
Yeah, awesome.
But in the, back of my mind, I'm like, man, I got a meeting in 10 minutes.
Yep.
Can we please get through this? Whatever it is you're trying to tell me, can we please get through it here in the next 30 seconds, please?
Yeah. Yeah, we're responsible for that. I love what you're saying there, because that is such an important role for us as leaders to teach people how to communicate with us. And we have people that come through the program initially, they disagree with that. And then once they learn the concept, they find out it's so much easier in having someone come to them and be very direct. We talk about, you said consistency, which is extremely important as a leader as well. One of the 8 C's of communication, consistency. Being very consistent is imperative as leaders, because as you were talking about, people know how to come to you and know exactly what information, data points they have for you. And that's where you can you get the best opportunity for acquiring all the information, then you can effectively make a decision.
Yep, absolutely.
One of my coaches once told me, we're talking about accountability, because we're accountable for our subordinates, accountable for a lot. He said, Granison, if you are successful, it's your fault. If you fail, it's your fault. And I had to chew on that for a minute. I was like, okay. He said, that's the true essence of accountability. Some organizations have weaponized accountability, because I'm also under the strong belief that accountability is communication. It is communication. If something happens, well, right, okay, cool. I'm going to communicate with you. Something goes wrong, we're still going to communicate. So we have the opportunity to have these messages or message going back and forth and sender and receiving, as you were talking about before. The message, the sender, right? And I mean, the messenger and the receiver. Accountability. How important is the culture of accountability, at least painting the right or the correct picture of accountability? Not that it's weaponized, not only accountable when something happens, but you're also accountable when something goes right in the organization as well. Talk about accountability for us for a minute.
Yeah, accountability is one of those items that's one of my core values. One of the things that I tell my teams is, look, I expect for you to make mistakes, and I'm still to this day trying to search for a better word than mistake, because mistake to me implies you did something wrong. But if things don't go the way you thought they were supposed to go, if things don't go the way that they were planned to go, I just asked for two things. One, figure out what specifically went wrong. I'm sorry, three things. Figure out one, what went wrong so that we don't do that same thing again the next time.
Right.
Two, take accountability for it. Ask yourself, where was I at fault personally? And then look at how, others maybe could have played their role a little bit differently, and what was my role in communicating to them what they needed to do in that particular situation. But that all starts with self-reflection and asking that initial question, what was my role? And that's what accountability is to me. What was my role in what just happened, right?
Sure.
Now in my position, when my team does something well, my responsibility is to make sure that everybody knows who was responsible for that positive outcome.
There you go. That's it. Yeah.
At the end of the day, when something doesn't go well, I'm the leader. And so I have an accountability for that outcome if it didn't go well.
Yep.
And my teams know this. My teams know this. And the reason is, as the leader, Granison, I am accountable for everything that my teams do.
We're always accountable.
Absolutely. So, some of your listeners are probably gonna write in like, I don't know what he's talking about, taking credit for all the bad stuff and giving, praise for all the good stuff.
That's part of being a leader, though.
That's the job.
That's the job.
And I've told others, if you're not willing to be accountable, and what accountability doesn't mean pointing the finger.
Right.
Accountability means taking responsibility for what happened. And if again, if you're the leader, that outcome is because you didn't do a quality check of what they were doing.
Absolutely.
You didn't ask the right questions to make sure that they covered all the bases. You didn't provide the right environment for them to be successful in. There's always something that you can kind of come back to yourself and hold yourself accountable and say, you know what, where did I play a role in this? Understand the role that you played in it, and then figure out how to do it differently the next time. And so to me, Granison, accountability is twofold. There's self-accountability. And then there is that second part of accountability where again, you're constantly asking, what was my role? Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well said. I like that. It's great advice for our listeners. Coaching. Every great leader I know of, and I'm talking to them, they've had someone that has imparted wisdom, knowledge, information, concepts onto them. What about you? How has coaching played a part in you becoming who you are as a leader?
Well, some people intermix coaching and mentorship, and I'm glad you made that distinction. I've had few coaches, Granison. I've had several mentors, but I've had few coaches. And not every coach is going to teach you in kind of that warm, cuddly classroom type environment.
Sure.
Some coaches, will, when a situation happens, they're gonna, why did you do that, right? What were you thinking when you were doing that? For some people, that's, maybe that's a negative interaction. For me, on both the military side and the civilian side, some of the coaches that I've had, they want to correct right on the spot.
Yeah, sure.
And I will say this, I hated going through it, but I'm a better leader for it today.
Very well said. Love it.
Now, that said, my coaching approach is a little bit different than the coaching that I've received. And I think that's where that more academic teaching side comes into play. Whereas, with me, um, I figure out the concept that I want to get across to the individual, um, and then I figure out how is that person going to best receive that concept that I'm trying to give them, right? Um, is it right on the spot in front of everybody? Uh, you know, Coming across like I'm angry, or is it going to be one-on-one, where I'm like, hey, let's talk about what happened yesterday, and walk me through in your mind, kind of the milestones of what happened and maybe what you would do differently, right? To me, that's coaching.
Yeah.
Now I have had some people who have taken a more of a direct approach with me and said, hey, Auston, look, um, uh, this situation went down. I don't think you thought of this, this, and this. I said, man, I didn't think of that.
That's true. Yeah.
Um, here's the biggest part about coaching that if your listeners don't remember anything else that I said, the person has to be receptive to coaching. And if they're not, you can try to do all the coaching in the world. It's not going to take.
Not going to take. Very well said.
And it's the same for me. And, and I'll admit this, since I'm on the other side of my career, I'm not at the beginning where I need to kind of worry so much, but, it's the same with me, Granison. If I don't want to, if I don't see the value in what someone is telling me, I'm not going to learn. I'm not.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. But the difference is now, at this point, if I don't want coaching from someone, I will tell them, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but this isn't something I'm interested in hearing a different perspective on or learning from.
Right.
I wouldn't dare do that earlier in my career, but that's where I am now.
Sure.
And it's the same thing, even with my teammates. I'll ask them, right? Look, we just went through this situation. I think there's some great learning opportunities for you. If you want to hear them, I'm more than happy to share them with you. If you don't, I don't want to waste your time and I don't want to waste my time. And so I'll give them permission to, I'll give them permission to basically not allow me to coach them, or I'll have them give me permission to coach them. So like I said, Granison, I think I've had more mentorship than I've had experiences with coaching. But the coaching that I have received has made me an absolutely better leader and person. So.
Well said. Yes. I strongly believe in coaching. I have some coaches myself, and some of them were putting salt in the wound and putting the finger in the wound, right? And it's painful at times, but you learn. I know, like what you're saying, you learn at that exponential rate instead of incremental at times, because they really challenge you to think totally different than the way you have been thinking about that particular situation, if that's the case, and other concepts that I had no idea about. And I was like, what? Yeah. One of my coaches, one of my bosses, who was also my coach, said, okay, today I'm going to teach you how to walk. And here I am, 18, 19 years old in the corporate. Walk. I've been walking since I was a little baby, right? But so, and then I understood what he was talking about in terms of nonverbal communication. I'm like, oh, okay. So it was a very enlightening moment. We all have those coaches, have several mentors as well. There is a difference. That's why I made that distinction. Any of your people going through coaching right now?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have one individual that's going through your organization, and we are seeing absolutely substantial changes in that individual, positive changes in that individual. since receiving coaching, from your organization.
Awesome.
All of my direct reports receive coaching from me on a regular basis.
Awesome.
And that's, to me, that's also part of my job. There's this, I don't use a lot of, terminology from my military days, but there is this one phrase or one set of terminology called force multiplier. And force multiplier meaning um, everybody can't be reliant on you all the time to get the simplest of things done.
Mm-hmm.
So, so when people come to me, typically it's because there's a problem that needs to be thought through, and I've earned a reputation where I'm trusted in my problem solving skills. So my job is, if I want to be able to take vacation, if I want to be able to take sick time, if I want somebody to be able to replace me at some point in my career, and to me, I think that should be every leader's goal.
Yes.
Then I need to be able to create these force multipliers. I need to help them understand how I go through problem solving, so that they can go through problem solving and they can be trusted with their problem solving skills the same way people trust me with my problem solving skills. And that's a direct result that only comes through coaching. Um, and I do want to be careful on time, but if you give me a minute, Granison, there is one story that I do want to share.
Absolutely, yes. Fire away. Absolutely, love it.
So, I had this one boss. He I didn't like working for him when I worked for him. I didn't. Um, I always had this kind of golden rule: when I come home, I'm home. I leave work. This person was able to, had such an effect on me. I took this person home with me too, mentally, right?
Yes.
And my daughters, you have daughters as well, Grandson. My three daughters could see it written all over my body language, written all over my, just how I go into deep thought about, what happened during the day and that sort of thing. And, but this person, the way that they would coach me, I didn't like. I didn't like it at all. And the person would tell me all the time, because I see this potential in you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I say, well, you know what? And I care about you. Well, care about me less, man. I don't want, I don't want to be thinking every single time,
Nice.
every time, an adverse situation comes up, I'm thinking about you. I'm not thinking about the situation because I know you're going to be on me,
Yeah.
But once I stopped working for that, person, all my development stopped. Right? And you say, well, wait a minute. You were in a situation where you were stressed and where you were, feeling all different kinds of ways, and then you went to a situation where, your boss was nice and he was, when things would go wrong, you'd say, okay, well, is everything okay? Which is nice, right? That's nice. I'm not going to complain about that, but my development as a leader stopped.
Wow.
And and I ended up calling this person and telling him, thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
And you know what his response was? I knew you were going to make this call because I know your integrity. I know who you are. Wow. And it was true, Granison. This person as a coach, I didn't like his style, but he was growing me. He was invested in me. He, a lot of times as leaders, we take the easy way out. Well, you know what? I don't want to go through the all the emotions that's going to go with, this person when I tell them this thing. So I'm not going to tell them that thing. Right. And we're just going to move on. I'm not developing my people if I don't tell them what I need to tell them. And I know that 100% because of that situation that I came out of, to where, like I said, I got to a point where I'm like, I don't feel challenged. I don't feel like I'm growing. And I was in the perfect situation, Granison, where I was constantly being challenged. I was constantly growing. And it takes me back to this thing that I remember, my mom used to tell us when we were kids. And then I remember one Sunday, this pastor of a church mentioned the same thing. When you have a sapling, a new plant, that sapling is typically in a pot, and you water it, you make sure it's getting enough sun, and it'll grow to a certain point, and then it'll stop. When you at a certain point, you got to take that sapling out of that pot, and you've got to plant it in new, more fertile soil. And when you're taking that plant out, some of the little roots are breaking off. I'm sure that hurts the plant. When you're removing that sapling, all the dirt that it got used to, all the soil that it got used to, that's all going away. Right. It's probably stressing that little sapling out.
Right.
But then when you plant it in this new, more fertile soil to where its roots can fully grow and flourish, that's when it grows up into this big tree. Right. And I look at coaching the same way. Sometimes, like you said, sometimes it's not going to be fun. Sometimes it's going to be painful, because if you got a good coach, they're going to point out some things that you don't want them to point out. They're going to point out some things that make you take a long, hard look at yourself.
Yep.
And make you say, wow, I was wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now I understand why this person was coaching me the way that they were coaching. You know why they were coaching me that way, Granison? Because they knew that was how to motivate me and to get me to respond.
Yep.
They knew if they did the flowery thing, I'm probably going to do the dad nod. Anybody that doesn't know the dad nod, it's where your kid is talking to you and you're so tired, but you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So done that too, but he's unfortunately.
So this guy knew he actually was one of the consummate leaders I've had in my career, because he learned me. He knew how to get me to respond. He knew how to motivate me. He knew what I needed to hear and what I didn't need to hear. And I'm a doggone better leader for that, because of that. So.
Fantastic. Wow, that was a powerful story. I love that story. In fact, I'm going to send out this conversation to all of our coaches that we have. So I appreciate your time. I'm going to stop it right there. That's the perfect ending. Sir, Auston Davis at HeartFlow, Chief Information Security Officer, thank you very much for your time. I really thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and look forward to chatting with you again.
Absolutely. Thank you again for having me. And I really appreciate this. And I appreciate what your company is doing for several of our employees. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. All right. Bye-bye.